And good evening and welcome to West Michigan First and 10. I'm John Russell along with Cal Van Single.
Is there any room on Mars for us, you think?
None.
None?
My family's there.
We're going to go through week one now that we officially know where everybody is, but first we'll kind of recap as we've done the games around the area and why change a good thing. We'll start out with the OK Green, and let's start out with the Big Reds taking it to Zeeland East 62-16. And Scott, not surprised again that the Big Reds won. I'm a little bit surprised that the spread there. I didn't necessarily think that Muskegon would necessarily take it to them 62-16. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they've really hit their stride. Muskegon has. That locked up the outright OK Green Conference title. And again, it was the running game that really made the difference. Destin Piggy, one of their fantastic sophomores, 4 carries, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a pretty good average, right? Are there any mathematicians on this panel here?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that's really good.
Cal's going to take off his shoes.
Yeah, and then Miles Walton had a team high 132 yards and a touchdown and 12 carries. Jacob Price, another 88 yards. So they've kind of got that 3-pronged rushing attack there, and it's been tough all year.
Yeah.
Pick your. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Pick your poison.
Yeah.
Piggy or Price, or Piggy or Jacoby. I mean, one of the two. I'm going to key on this kid. He's not going to beat us. Oh, the other one's going to go off for 250 yards. How do you stop? And then Miles, and yeah, you made the point. Three-headed monster back there and a good offensive line up front, getting better all the time.
Yep.
And Mike, you saw Muskegon a lot a couple of years ago. You were part of their network over there, so you kind of maybe got a wind of the group that was coming up a little bit. No surprise to you. It's I mean, they were talking about this team for years. I mean, they always talk about Muskegon.
Again, my concern comes down to they're going to be they're going to be able to use that speed, that running game for 12 weeks. Okay, then when they get to the point where teams match up somewhat with them, are you one-dimensional? Are you going to be able to throw the ball 3rd and 15, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8? You know, when you're putting 8 people in the box, you get yourself in situations. You know, whether it's a screen pass, a short passing game, sprint out passing game, RPOs, but you got to have something in place to have somewhat of a balanced attack, and especially if you're behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and do they have that?
Yeah.
I mean, has Miles Walton showed that we can throw the football this year? You know.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it odd because you average, let's just say 400 yards every Friday night rushing the football, and it works for 13 straight weeks, and you're averaging 50 points a game. So you think, I'm not going to change what gets us to week 14. Then maybe like Mike says, they struggle against a team that matches up to them defensively. But how do you just take your whole offense and throw it away when you're rushing for 400 yards and 50 a game? That's people get upset. They're not winning the last one, and I'm going, God, you got there.
It's tough, yeah.
But here's where I'm going with that. When you look at the average point spread that Muskegon has throughout the course of the season, okay, there's probably 3, 4, 5 teams on their schedule. They know going into the game they're going to have a running clock. At some point in time, you say, we're coming out this game, and we're going to work on our passing game, okay? We're going to work on that and spend some time in game situations developing that. And, so that's the time you work on that, when you get in those games, okay? That you can go out there. You get ahead 28-0 in the first quarter, okay, well, we're going to start throwing the ball and see if we can do that. I'm just saying that's one option, but, implement that in your game plan for the week and say, we've got to look down the road and say, we must have something in place here so people can't put 8 or 9 people in the box on us, and throw our game that got us to the promised land off.
Yeah, and it worked to a point against Mona Shores. Part of that, I think, was maybe the Muskegon receivers maybe outdueled the Mona Shores defensive backs for the ball, had better position, and then at that point, Mona Shores just didn't tackle. So then a 10, 15-yard pass turns into a 60-yard touchdown. And that's kind of what I saw in that game. So they're able to throw it up there, but can you consistently do it when the pressure's on in those pressure situations when you're facing like athletes?
Okay, from a coaching standpoint, why invest all that time in 7-on-7s in June and July? Okay, what are you going to 7-on-7s for? To develop your passing attack. That's what 7-and-7s are structured for. Okay, well, what do you get out of it? You know, that's why you do that. So again, you know, I mean, it's a lot of time to invest in something and not get the reward back or be able to fall back on it at a crucial period in time in the season.
We'll move on to Mona Shores, another team that's been rolling here, and they certainly continue to roll. Scott, against Wyoming, no surprise here, 49-0.
Yeah, and you're talking about a team who can throw the ball, and they don't rely on it overly either, but they can when they have to. And that's Mona Shores, especially with senior quarterback Mark Konechny, he's had a fantastic year. I haven't seen a better quarterback in this immediate area. I haven't seen a lot of the Grand Rapids kids or anything, but in the Muskegon area, I haven't seen a better one. And in fact, I don't think anyone's even close when it comes to what he can bring to the table, both running and passing. He's had a great year, and that was he had to kind of wait his turn last year.
Right.
He was sitting behind Brady Rose, but again, I've said it before, but Mark, big, strong kid, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He had another nice game against Wyoming, which is way down, but still had a nice season. And you know, he's obviously going to be a key for them this week. And we'll get to the playoff matchup in a minute. But he had another nice game. They outrushed Wyoming 248-28, so they basically could have named the score in that game pretty much.
Sure, Cal, a great warm-up game for the Mona Shore Sailors against a team like Wyoming.
Yeah, it looks like they played well. You know, we have not called one of their games.
No.
But you see highlights of the quarterback. He certainly does throw a nice football. I think they're going to be, you know, I'm thinking about this since I just came back from the UP partridge hunting. Mona Shores is going from being the hunter to the hunted. And I think there are going to be teams now that circling them going, we want them. In the past, it's always been the other way. I think that's going to switch here now.
That's a great point.
I agree with what you said. I've watched quite a bit of film over the past couple of days on Shores, and because I like the bracket they're in this district. Okay, but Konechny is one of the better quarterbacks in the state of Michigan, and I know he went on a visit to Central Michigan this weekend, and they like him up there. But I watched the things he does mechanically. He's a dual threat, obviously. But I really like him as a quarterback. I like him as a leader, and it's so unfortunate he had to have Brady Rose in front of him, or he'd have played 2 or 3 years, you know, at Mona Shores and really had some impressive statistics. And it's tough when you sit back in the wings and you have to wait till your senior year and have that kind of talent.
And you get that X amount of time. It's not like, this is your time to shine. You better do it.
That's your window.
You better do it. And I will add about Konechny and about other area quarterbacks. That doesn't mean like a guy like Miles Walton at Muskegon isn't a great player in his own right, but I don't see him as a pure quarterback. He's a great athlete playing quarterback, but I think Konechny is a pure quarterback.
And that's a good point. You know, Miles Walton started as a defensive back, as a freshman or sophomore over there. And I mean, everybody has had opportunities to see him at the highest level playing defensive back. And now he's an athlete and he needs to lead that team. So when you see him getting recruited, what do you think he's going to get recruited as? You know?
Athlete, right?
You know, so
defensive
I'm
back,
just saying,
whatever, playmaker.
But, yeah, that's a good point about, you know, what's going on. So
One thing about backing up Brady Rose, that's really that will carry him forward lifelong. There are going to be 2 rings that sit right here that say state champion on them. Not all bad. I mean, you're a 2-time state champion. You know, you can kind of hang on to that for a while.
That's not a bad thing to have. You're right. You're right about that. Yep.
We'll wrap up the OK Green Union beating Reese Puffer 43-42, and we've talked about this for the last couple of years. This is not your grandfather or father's Union team. I mean, you know, it looked like Puffer might get them early, but you know, Union comes back and they've got it going over there.
Yeah, I didn't see the final stats on this game as it relates to Union, but it's my understanding that Tommy Stevens the quarterback was
right.
back, and that changes their whole team.
It does.
He played against Mona Shores. I'm not sure if he played against Muskegon, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But against Mona Shores, they had a hard time dealing with him early on. They adjusted and held him in check in the second half, but he's a great athlete. Don Fellows, the former Shores coach, said that he's one of the better athletes, more electric athletes that he's
Right.
coached.
I think Muskegon knocked him out in the first quarter, and he's just getting back. And now, going back to Puffer, I've said it all year. I think they needed a signature win this year to get some excitement. It just didn't seem to happen. So hopefully Matt Burr can still continue to build something over there and keep kids excited, so they keep coming out, get in the weight room, get stronger, and get better.
Yep.
I agree, 100%.
I thought Zeeland East might have been that opportunity for them, and that was a 17-14 game they lost on the field goal, on a late field goal. I thought that was earlier in the season because Puffer, that could have given them a really nice solid start heading right into the teeth of their schedule, and they couldn't get that one, and then at that point you're up against it, I thought.
We'll move on to the OK Blue. Fruitport had the dubious distinction of finishing their season against Unity Christian, 55-13. Unity Christian gets the Fruitport Trojans.
Well, it's like, congratulations, Fruitport, you're in the playoffs, they're the only 4-5 Division IV team in the playoffs.
Right.
So you don't have to play Unity again, so congratulations on that. But you do have to go up to Cadillac and play them, the team you faced in week 2 and lost 28-12. But I'd still rather take that than playing Unity right away. So, I mean, I've always liked Fruitport's athletes that they have this year on this team, but, it's just up front was going to be more of a question. But, we'll see. Cadillac is strong in the running game and strong up front, so it'll be a tough test for them.
Yeah, the good news, Cal, is that Fruitport has made some strides this year. I mean, it not necessarily always translate to the win-loss, but obviously they've got some players coming through. Been a long dry spell for the Trojans.
Yeah, it certainly has been. Strength of schedule maybe is going to help Fruitport maybe in this game. But yeah, Cadillac, a very good football club. But I tell you what, I think a lot of coaches around here will say, send me north. Then we get on a bus and go north versus going south. And you never know. Maybe Fruitport, with the strength of schedule, might have something for Cadillac on probably Friday night, I believe.
Well, no one thought Cadillac was going to dump Edwardsburg last year. It happens.
Well, I guess if there's a ray of sunlight, you're 4-5, you're in the playoffs, and after the game, Club 37 is only 45 minutes away from the
Brilliant idea. I knew we brought this guy along. That's the great prime rib, by the way.
Yeah.
Not that I heard that.
Pardon.
Spring Lake, they end their regular season. They're in the postseason. Again, we'll focus on that in just a few seconds here. But Allendale reaches up and grabs them 35-28.
That surprised me. I mean, Fruitport knocked off Allendale the week before, which was, I thought, one of the games that essentially got them in the playoffs. But Spring Lake, they've been reeling with injuries. They're way down the depth chart now, and they're like their tailback, their lead running back spot. So, I cut them some slack there. But Jackson Core, senior quarterback, Bill Core's son, he's had a great year, really, at quarterback. He was 12 of 23 for 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I think he might have also ran for a score. I'm not sure about that. But he's had a great season. They're going to be leaning heavily on him this week against Rapids Christian.
I certainly didn't see that coming at all. I kind of surprised me when I seen that box score on Friday night. But, Allendale, Coopersville's another team. They both have had good seasons there. So maybe those two schools are going to start to develop into football programs too, which will be nice because they're going to cross over some of the Lakeshore schools also. And
Mike, we talk about trying to get that momentum going into the playoffs. You really want to win that 9th week to set the tone. How bad does this set Spring Lake back losing to Allendale?
Well, and again, you compound that with the injuries.
Right.
And that's tough because these kids, they know. Yeah. When they go to practice and they say, okay, he's not here, he's not playing, he's sick, he's out, and then your mentality of just coming off a loss, going into the playoffs where now, these people, everybody qualified for the playoffs, so there's something good about every team, and but everybody's going through that, But it's tough to see how 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids handle it, and I guess it all comes down to leadership from the coaches. The mentality that they approach those kids with and the mindset that they get them in.
We'll finish up in the OK Red with Grand Haven. Speaking of finishing up, they finish up their year, losing to certainly no shame in this. Rockford, 28-6. Coach Farley trying to bring the Bucks back.
Yeah, they kept it fairly respectable considering. I mean, a 28-6 score. I mean, that was more competitive than maybe many thought would happen. Ryan Francis, the senior for Grand Haven, had another really good game. 105 yards on 28 carries and the lone touchdown. He was pretty strong. He was one of the consistents throughout the year, so kudos to him on a great season. But, you know, Rockford's just on another level. They're unbeaten, went through I wouldn't say rolled through the OK Red, but got through it unscathed, which that's never an easy thing to do.
Right. And let's talk about feeling your age. Coach Cummings over there at Rockford. Remember watching him when his dad was the athletic director over in White Cloud, one of the little kids that used to run around in the gym there. And now all of a sudden, you know, this young man, after a fine collegiate career, has come back to Rockford and is continuing on that fine Ram tradition.
Yeah, he's done a great job there, and I think Scott too. I wonder, you know, they're looking at that week 9. We just got to get up a couple scores. I wonder if they brought a lot of their starters, their key guys out, and then ran some of their good seconds in there and let them play quite a bit, so they didn't have some injuries. I think back of Montague a few years ago with Cameron Maben. I think I had heard Pat Collins said you get 1 quarter against Fremont and you're coming out and he breaks his hand, and that I mean, I think they lost at Comstock Park. I think
Lost North Point Christian,
North Point
at Comstock Park.
There's where the Comstock Park's coming
without him, which could have made the difference.
Absolutely, because that game was so close, you know, and so you kind of wonder sometimes when it gets to week 9 and you get up a couple scores and coaches are going, I can't lose these guys now in a game that we're going to be able to win, so they pull them out. I wonder if that's why it's just 28-6.
I have to say, before we go to Mike real quick, too, you brought up White Cloud and Cummings. Can you imagine what White Cloud's thinking if they could have kept the Cummings boys? They go on to Belding and lead them to state titles, and White Cloud's like, what about us?
That's where you fire your recruiting program.
Well, how about Grant? Because they had the fabulous Huck brothers that left Grant and went to Oak Ridge.
Isn't there a guy named Convertini that's also from Grant that ended up
Yeah,
a Catholic?
that was my football coach, too.
Yeah.
His grandpa was, yeah.
Got to build that
we
wall.
never build that wall, right.
I say that all the time.
You know, the one thing you got to remember too with Rockford is the last 6 games, their quarterback, who is a Division I quarterback, he's been playing hurt. Okay, and if you've watched him throw footballs over 30 yards, okay, his mechanics, they're shot. Okay, because of the injury. So again, with 28 points against Grand Haven, they bring the number 2s and 3s in, let him play. You're right. It's an opportunity to heal and get him ready down the road when they're going to need him. But he's been hurting all year. He's been hurting all year, and it was so obvious watching him, especially against Caledonia, trying to throw the football down the field. And the body motion he had to use to get enough on the football to get it down the field. So, you know, hopefully he gets back and he's healthy, because he's a phenomenal athlete and, you know, a great person, a great kid. So, but Grand Haven, I'm looking at that score and I'm going 28-6. Kudos to us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I think the point spread would have been picked a little bit bigger than that.
Especially when you're talking, I know when we were doing the Power Hour, Mike, Grand Haven didn't have a JV team. And, you know, you're talking about a couple of years removed from that.
Right.
So, yeah, Coach Farley, you know, he's trying to build back better, not to jump on the line here, but, you know, it's, at some point.
You know, you talk about that's the difference between a program and a system.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you want to get the system in place.
Sure.
And that's what was not in place when he came back.
Right.
Okay, because of the turnover of coaches and the changing and everything. And so now, you know, Mike's trying to get that back in place where he's got it from the youth program built right on through. So it's a self-promoting program.
Sure. And we'll move over to the West Michigan Conference, and we'll start out with a key matchup that I think both you guys, I know on radio, Mike, you had this game. We're talking Muskegon Catholic and Oak Ridge, and I know you were there for CatchMark. Boy, it doesn't get any thriller. We were listening to the updates of this at our game with Ravenna, 30-28. Muskegon Catholic wins that one.
I'm going to volley it to Mike and let him have a first dibs at a game. He was there as well, like you said. What were your thoughts first?
Well,
on
I knew right off the bat as the game went on that John and Cal were there because the scoreboard quit working. And I thought foul play is suspected, and I knew exactly who came to mind with me. But, you know, that was just one of those classic games that were, you know, talking to both coaches before the game, and, you know, they expected it to go down to the wire. The last 3 quarters of the fourth quarter was played with no scoreboard, and a close game like that, everybody's on pins and needles. I can't imagine, you know, you're up there, one, trying to broadcast it.
Right.
And two, the fans are screaming and nobody's sitting down. And it's the coaches, I don't know what's going through their minds, you know, and how they're communicating on the field. And then, you know, you got chaos in the press box because they're trying to figure out, you know, I mean, they're shoving batteries and everything and you know, running extension cords.
And I didn't even get that aspect of it because I'm down on the sidelines for games now. But at one point, Oak Ridge had a 95-4 lead. I'm like, how do you blow a 95-4 lead? Because the scoreboard was malfunctioning, and that's what it said, 95-4.
Well, and it was a running clock, and it ran right out of the stadium.
But seriously, about the game, it was, you know, Cal's been talking for a few weeks now about the Jekyll and Hyde of Oak Ridge, and we saw it again. I mean, and that's not to take anything away from Catholic because that's a really solid team over there. But Oak Ridge had control, I thought. And I thought they outplayed Catholic for a large share of that game.
I saw one of the greatest high school runs I've seen in a long time, and it was Waller's first touch of the game when he turned the corner along their sideline, going to the south, around the left end. He turned that corner, and a defensive back from Oak Ridge came up, and he caught him. He didn't stiff arm him, he caught him. And as he brought him back, he threw him. And the kid went just flying. And I thought, if he does that on the other side of the fence around the stadium, he gets 3 to 5 years. Okay? I mean, that was wicked. But that young man, I'm looking at him going, is this the real deal or what? So I was really impressed with him and how hard he ran. And of course, you know, when you go to him like that on the last play of the game and then in the 2-point conversion, because their kicking game is not that, it's non-existent. Okay, but when you give him the ball on the 4th and 1, from the 1, the game's on the line with 7 seconds left, and then you turn right around for the 2-point conversion, we're going to give it to him again on the same exact, you know what I mean? I'm going, I got a lot of confidence in that guy. He's good.
Sure.
Well, number 77, Jaden Johnson for Catholic, he was a guy I interviewed right after the game. I'm like, I got to talk to him. First of all, he's a lineman. They never get talked to. He's also the guy in practice a few weeks ago when I was there kicking their PATs. So I don't know if this is an indictment on his kicking abilities, but they went for 2 the whole game. Yeah. And they ran that swinging gate or whatever you want to call it, where they lined up all their guys and then they brought them over. And Oak Ridge couldn't figure that out. They stopped him one time, I believe, on that, but that worked. That was a pretty good success rate for Catholic in that. But Jaden Johnson had the block field goal that kind of kept him alive, and then he had the key blocks allowing Waller to score the tying touchdown in the go-ahead 2-point conversion.
Yeah. Oak Ridge has had some nail-biters this year, Cal.
Well, they certainly have, up and down all season long. I've kind of mentioned it before, but here's a question. In 2021, how do you not have good special teams play? Special teams are a third of the game. And we seen it the other night with Central Montcalm. Right. Well, just a long snapper, and we're just going to say he just struggled. Yeah. I mean, and I'm like going, in today's football with special team coaches, I think of Jack Sugars, who puts on his own camp and other camps all over the state of Michigan. How do you not have a long snapper? How do you not have a holder? How do you not have a kicker when special teams are a third of the game and it's so important now? Wasn't maybe that much when we played, but in the last 20 years, you know, Mike played without a helmet in the 1800s. It probably never even thought
that
about
explains a lot of things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. You know, and that was that. How do you play the game in 2021 when special teams are that bad?
Sure.
Yeah. That's true.
Well, let's move on to the Portland Montague game. Portland handling Montague by the score of 31-7. Going into that, my concern was, we were talking about it last week, was, you know, boy, Montague not only lost that game to Whitehall, and I think Mike had asked the question, is there going to be like a hangover for Montague? And I said, I don't think it's going to be a hangover. I'm just concerned with how healthy they're going to be playing a team like Portland, and not making excuses or anything. But I mean, if you go full strength against a team like Portland, you're going to have a battle. But 31-7, I guess your take on that?
Yeah, from what I obviously didn't see the game. We were, I was at Catholic in Oak Ridge. We didn't have a reporter at that one, but we did a phone report with it. Right. Sounds like they were entirely disappointed or anything by the way they played. They thought they played okay. They just couldn't like capitalize on chances. So the 31-6 score or whatever it was wasn't necessarily indicative of the game, but it was just one of those things. Like you said, their margin for error was pretty small. They got a thin roster. They're a little banged up. Tug Nichols did play. I didn't know if he would, but he did play.
Yeah.
At least on offense, I think he played. But
Right.
that's their whole thing. I mean, I do give Montague credit. They never shy away from playing a tough schedule.
Right.
I mean, if you look at them 6-3, the final AP rankings came out yesterday. I'm kind of surprised that they weren't at least in the honorable mention category. I mean, look at their 3 losses
Yeah.
to Division 4 powerhouse Edwardsburg, Division 5 Portland, and Division 4 Whitehall.
Right.
And then they beat Division 5 ranked Oak
Yeah.
Ridge pretty handily. So
Sure.
I don't know. I feel pretty good about them going forward as long as they're relatively healthy.
Yeah, talk about bookending your schedule. Start out with Edwardsburg and end up with Portland.
And you look back at it now, I'm sure people thought, oh my gosh, this is a running clock. Going back to the Portland game, or I'm sorry, the Edwardsburg game.
Right.
We have a running clock on us. No, that hasn't happened in years. What was that, I think 38-0? Well, you look back now at what Edwardsburg has done throughout the rest of the year. That's a great score. You only held them to 38. Oh my gosh, they've been hanging 50 and 60 on everybody. I would really like to know, and you said it, why are the numbers so low at Montague? You know, looks like there's 5-6 kids on the sideline. That's about it. You looked at Whitehall. Now I know there's two divisions higher. There's probably 200 or maybe more kids in that school. So you got more kids to choose from. But Montague's been 18, 20 kids here for quite a while, and you just kind of wonder. I mean, and I know kids. I'm not picking on Montague because there's so much more for kids to do today. Plus soccer, plus boys tennis. But I mean, that's a pretty electric winning program, and you know, you still seem to have low numbers every year.
What do you think, Mike? I mean, I think you had a son that went to Montague. I mean, you've been coaching and been around football a long time.
He started out as son. We won't talk
Well,
about
that's why I said I kind of questioned whether it was, no.
All right.
No,
It's
so
been a rough couple of years, fellas.
but you've been around the game a lot. What do you think the reasons are for that at Montague?
You know, I don't know what comes to mind when we talk about this is the first game and the last game, Edwardsburg
Right.
and Portland. Okay, well, when you look at your schedule from here on out, okay, for the next few years, you gotta understand it's a point-based system.
Sure.
So, Portland and Edwardsburg, do you think Montague got a lot of points out of those games? You bet they did. Okay, but now what happens is you have to think. Do they keep them on the schedule, knowing that this is going to be a dogfight week 1 and week 2, or week 1 and week 9? Okay, or you know, do we think this one through and say, well, we'll take one of the tough ones, and now you have to think of the flip side of that. What's going through Edwardsburg's mind and
Right.
Portland's mind?
Right.
Are they thinking, all right, we want to keep? Do we want to keep Montague on our schedule?
Yeah.
You know, so these are the things that I'm thinking about. You know, ahead of schedule of what these football coaches and these ADs are going to be going through in the next couple months.
Right.
Because they may not be able to touch the schedule for next year.
Sure.
But let me tell you something. There's going to be years to follow.
Yeah.
And that's with this format, that's what they got to look at. And yeah, the injuries are going to happen. You're playing younger kids all the time.
Right.
You know, you got so many 9th graders playing varsity, so many 10th graders, a lot more than you had 10 years ago.
If I could add something with the West Michigan Conference splitting, and now we're going to have the 2 divisions. You look at Ravenna, their schedule's full already because they already know we're going to play Montague. They're going to play like Oak Ridge in the beginning of the season and Montague at the end.
Yep.
You kind of wonder now if some of these, like a Montague, who's had Edwardsburg and Portland, if they just do away with it, and they're going to figure out, they're going to play 2 schools, hopefully relatively the same size or a little bit bigger, but a lot closer to home. If that doesn't start to take effect in the next couple of years.
Let's move on to, I'll tell you what, we were again getting back to the Montague Whitehall discussion. Mike said that the other part of that we didn't have time was, is there a hangover for Whitehall playing Reed City? I'm more inclined after watching, again, it's tough. I don't want to disrespect Reed City. They won the championship. They're a very, very good team. But I think probably all of us in this room thought, hey, you know, West Michigan Conference, you know, yeah, okay, the gold, the CSA is what it is, you know, maybe a couple of good teams and the rest not so good. How tough is it? But I'm going to tell you what, you know, maybe not to make an excuse or take anything away from Reed City, but maybe, you know, the Battle of the Bell still lingered, was ringing in the ears. How's that? Ringing in the ears of Whitehall going against Reed City.
It's hard not to at least consider that. I mean, that was one of the thoughts that crossed my mind. And no matter what you do as a coach, sometimes it's hard to get some kids to move on past that. And you hope that there's bigger goals in that. Not that there's any, obviously winning a conference title is great, especially since it's been so long since you won one. But yeah, you just wonder what the mental state was going up in that game. And Reed City, I think we'll find out probably soon enough, because I think, you know, Montague and them are probably going to meet next week. I expect both of them to win this week, and we'll get to that discussion in a minute. But, I mean, we'll find out more about Reed City soon. But, yeah, I had that same thought kind of about Whitehall.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder for Reed City if they know they've always struggled with the West Shore teams. If they want, this is our chance to at least show that, hey, we can compete with your guys. And now we compete with you, compete with and beat your conference champion. Their head coach might have taken that and used that for enticement.
Yep.
It's a Rick Hickman jinx.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to say it. I'll say it. You know, the thing I think about too is we talk about the strength of the West Michigan Conference and the quality of the teams in it. You know, who would have thought last week we're sitting here? You know,
I know where you're going with this.
All three of our
Tri-champions.
champions would lose on week 9.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's not something we even would even think about.
Right.
You know, I mean, we're thinking, okay, these co-champs, that's pretty good. You know, that's you guys are. Then they all go out and they suffer a defeat on week 9, and we're like,
it's an eye opener. Yeah, it really is an eye opener. A game that we did, Cal, you alluded to it before. I'll let you take the lead on this one. Ravenna over Central Montcalm 55-19, and you really hit on kind of the Achilles heel for Central Montcalm, not being able to get the snap from the long snap back to the punter. I mean, the punting game became to the point that pretty soon it was like, I don't care if it's 4th and 42, we're going to go for it because we can't do any worse. That was just really tough for Central Montcalm.
It certainly was. Special teams really cost them. Thomas McCullough had a great night with the 4 touchdowns. Offensive line blocked well. And really just a special night there for Ravenna. They played all 3 aspects of the game. Offense, defense, special teams played really well.
Yeah, scored a touchdown in every aspect of the game. We talked about that as well. Mike, your thoughts on Ravenna this year? This seems to be, again, we talk about hitting that momentum, that stride at the, at the right time. They seem to. They're banged up too. I mean, everybody's banged up to a certain point. You have to play a 9-game season.
And again, there's a big learning curve here. They switched over in Justin Eagle's second year to a new offense.
Right.
So they're trying to pick up a new offensive scheme and plug players in according to the positions. And it's a hit and miss kind of thing.
Right.
So, but I think. Overall, I think Ravenna accomplished a lot this year.
Yeah.
So I think they got a lot to build on over the course of the winter.
Sure. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I think so too. I'm interested this week. They're playing North Muskegon.
Yeah.
It's our game of the week for CatchMark, and I think there's an inclination people just to assume Ravenna's going to roll over North Muskegon. It was 17-6 last time, but man, I don't know. I still kind of do like Ravenna in that one, but I don't know if that's necessarily a gimme by any means. And but I'm curious to see what adjustments are made going from last time. And that's a game you called, wasn't it? Didn't you guys call Ravenna North Muskegon?
Yeah, we did. Exactly.
And I'm curious just to kind of see how that one's going to go Friday.
Well, that leads us. Go ahead, Cal.
Well, I get to do something. Well, turnabout is fair play, Homer.
We're not even talking about Grant though.
No, the other. Because I took Muskegon a couple weeks ago and you called me Homer. So I've been waiting. I filed that one away.
Yeah.
I think Ravenna's going to be a tough out. I think they're going to surprise some people.
Well, that leads us perfectly into the North Muskegon-Ludington game. And Coach Larry Witham, and I want to be careful how I say this, because I'm going to say the big statement here is
you related to him?
He gets more with less, and I don't mean that with talent. I just mean bodies. I mean, every year we talk about it from all of us covering the West Michigan Conference. I mean, they just get the living snot beat out of them physically by bigger schools. And here he is. He's playing Ludington, a bigger school again. Granted, Ludington's not having the greatest year, but still a bigger school, more bodies and all of that thing. And he's going at it with a third-string quarterback. You would think there's no way in heck that these guys can even compete. And it turned out Ludington was the team that was having trouble competing. North Muskegon
winning 20. North Muskegon 25-0. That was impressive. I mean,
good point. That's a real good point.
We do these picks every week, and
right.
I was thinking, oh, well, because knowing the injury situation, because they're down James Young, their starting freshman quarterback,
And
Danny
Belmonte,
Belmonte, their stud
yep.
junior running back, who's also their backup quarterback.
Right.
Thinking, man, I don't know. I like North Muskegon a lot, but I just don't know if I can make that call. I'm going to go with Ludington, and then I'm like, no, I'm going to go back to North Muskegon. I'll pick them.
Yeah.
And they won, and they just won it. Done
But you
it.
didn't pick it until Saturday morning. That's unfair.
Well, you can't do that. I'm the one that writes the story. I can pick it, right? Or
You got a
going.
point.
That's the nice thing
You
about
gotta-
online reporting. You can edit it after the fact.
I'd take my hat off, didn't
Now you know the secret.
I tell you one thing about Larry Witham that I like. You talk to a lot of football coaches and you hear them talk. Yeah, I'm a football coach. Yeah, I coach football. And Larry Witham's approach is, I teach football. Okay, I coach people. Okay, and so you're right. He gets a lot more, okay, than you would think out of his kids, and can plug them into different positions. And Coach Witham is really good at that.
He is.
And he surprises. I mean, a lot of people, you know, because he can stay competitive. And when you think he's down, bang.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
his programs are resilient and they pop right back.
Especially since it's just down to him and the water boy who's going to go in next, right?
Yeah, the water boy doesn't speak English.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Cal?
No, I've just always been impressed with North Muskegon. Usually the three Blues have just been beating them up here the last 10 years. Now you got a red team Ed Whitehall has become very, very good. So Larry's got to look at that and go, man, I have 4 tough games right off the bat. So, you know, and battle ways, and they're so much smaller in numbers, especially against Whitehall and Oak Ridge, and they just continue to battle.
That'll be interesting next year going into that division, conference expansion with the split divisions with the large and the small. North Muskegon or Ravenna, you would think going in, at least in the beginning, those would be kind of the 2 front runners in that smaller division.
And as we wind up the Michigan Conference, just want to kind of tip the cap to Hart, Joe Tanis over there. We've known Joe for a long time. They're going to have their first 4-win season in quite a while, so you know, kudos to them. And Hesperia picks up their first win for Coach Dave Smith, an old Ravenna boy over there. So good on you, Dave Smith, right?
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to a Saturday game that was played Lake State, Muskegon Heights, and McBain. McBain gets the better of Muskegon Heights in that one, Scott.
Yeah, I knew that would be a tough game for Heights. To their credit, they were right there. It was a game that kind of could have gone either way.
Yeah.
The good news is that they still came out of it, got the playoff berth, and now they're hosting a game which I was informed today this might be their first ever home playoff game. I still have a hard time believing that. I'm going to need to see documentation on that. Maybe you guys know, but that's just because, believe it or not, Heights has a pretty rich history. I think people who've been following football around here long enough do know that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's great that they're getting a home playoff game. It should be a good game against Holden too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they have a rich history, but it just hasn't been that long since we've had 6 in year in. It seems like, you know, but was it? I mean, I don't know if it's been 10. It's probably been 10 years, but
Well, you go back to the Willie Snead era.
yeah, you know, and so
Even Blankenship,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, a six in your end has probably helped them, but I just don't think it's been around that long where they were good enough at that during that period. They were able to host a playoff game.
Yeah, and
Be in
they're
the playoff.
5-4, so it's not
Yeah.
not even the 6 winning you're in this year because they're going to the more of the strength of schedule. But it's good for them. 5-4 getting in, hosting the game too,
Well,
like you said.
and if you remember correctly, when Snead left, they brought in Joe Blankenship, okay? Blankenship's, you know who his quarterback was? The last year they had football there with him? Was a sophomore by the name of Deshaun Thrower.
That's
Okay,
right.
so what happens then? Boom.
Yeah.
Bolts.
Yeah.
Goes over to Muskegon, Player of the Year.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm saying you're right. There's some talent there, and a couple bad years, and with football, and now the program. It just seems so hard to get it back
Yeah.
to the level you were at. But,
Yeah.
and they had some, like I said,
Height. Yeah.
Snead went out of there and played Division I college football, and Thrower.
Yep.
I mean, some kids.
Heights has had so much talent that they were able to spread that and make other state champions around the area. I mean, it's amazing that way. Well, let's move on to the playoffs here. I know we only got a little bit of time left, and we want to do this justice. Let's move up to Division II. Talked about the Mona Shore Sailors. They're going to be on the road. They're going to be taking on Forest Hill Central. And Scott, what are you thinking?
That is a heck of a matchup. I've witnessed a couple of those Mona Shores, Forest Hill Central games, and last year in particular, it was like a 3-point game.
Yeah.
Came down literally to the last seconds where Forest Hill Central's guy got tackled at the 1. And there's still a couple seconds left. I remember walking along the end zone trying to get video of that last play, glancing at the scoreboard, still seeing a couple seconds, and then going back, focusing on the corner where the action was at.
Right.
And I looked back, and there were zeros on the clock, and I'm like, I was kind of confused. I didn't know if the clock was supposed to stop. I think there was a lot of confusion going
Sure.
on. Forest Hill Central runs down the field. Hey, we get one more play. We get one more play. Mona Shores Koziak comes running off the sideline toward the refs. It's over. It's over. And then the officials got together, had a conference, and said, ball game.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the second round. I mean, Shores went on and won it. That could have been the end of the road for them. They could have been home.
Sure.
So
Absolutely. You know, a couple things. The last 3 games for Forest Hills, the last 3 games they've outscored their opponents 94-7. Okay. The other thing, the last 6 seasons, they're 48-15. Tim Rogers came there from Kalamazoo College. Okay, and Dob actually coached them at K College, and what a great job he's done with that program. Okay, and he's got a great quarterback in Hunter Robinson, who's also a dual threat quarterback, not to the extreme that Mark Konechny is, I feel. Okay, because Konechny is, in my opinion, a much more polished quarterback. But remember this one. You know how many times this year, fellas, Mona Shores has punted?
4 times, right?
4 times.
Yep.
4 times they punted this year. Okay? And I see this game, you got 2 highly successful offenses. Okay? It's going to come down to how well Mona Shores defense plays in this game.
We recorded a podcast earlier today here, and that was one of my big sticking points for Shores is I think they've got the goods to make another deep run, but they also have the ability to lose right away. Part of it's matchups and part of it's the defense. I think they've got some ability on that side of the ball, but they've got to figure out how to tighten things up or it's going to be a short visit in the playoffs, I think.
And I do. I think it falls on both defenses, John, and you go, okay, you know, here we go, because you've got 2 highly successful offenses that are led by outstanding quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, and you look at both these guys, Tim Rogers and Matt Koziak, man, they're quarterback coaches.
Yeah.
You know, they're quarterback coaches. So, and I honestly feel the winner of this game is going to play Caledonia the next week, and the winner of that game is going to play De La Salle in the finals. I think that bracket over there that Shores is in, the toughest district in the state.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Exactly. Cal, your thoughts?
They were the hunters. Now they're the hunted.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of schools that want to crack at them, and I can quickly start to name them all off. And that's what happens when you win back-to-back state titles and you are the king. All of a sudden now, remember, because 10 years ago, Shores had never been in the playoffs, so they've been hunting all along. And Coach Koziak does this brilliant job of making them defending state champs 2 times. Now that flips. Now everybody wants a piece of them.
Well, Muskegon could speak a little bit on that. They've been doing that for years. They've been the hunted for years.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So, I mean, you
Big
get your
target.
program to a status where you're winning those state titles, then, yeah, that role switches quickly.
Yes, it does.
Just wanted to tell our producer, Jesse King, that we're probably going to go a little bit longer here today since we got some to go, but we'll get our way through this. Speaking of Muskegon, Scott, Division III, Lowell at Muskegon. This is a game that used to have a whole lot of sizzle when Lowell was a little better than they are right now. Maybe not so much, but Muskegon still got to show up and they got to play football.
Yeah, these are not your father's Red Arrows. No offense, but
Right,
it's
right.
just not, the program's just not in that same spot when
Sure.
you had those fantastic matchups with Muskegon and Lowell. I really like Muskegon to cruise in this one. And they're on their home turf, the fast track at Hackley Stadium with the turf there now.
Yeah.
I think you can already look ahead probably to Cedar Springs, Muskegon District Final. You know, I like Muskegon in that.
Yeah.
So where I'm really looking ahead to is like a regional with DeWitt and Muskegon. I think a lot of people are looking at that right away.
Right. Your thoughts, Mike?
I think it's a travesty, and I think Shane and Coach Fairfield is just shaking his head over the fact he wished Noel Dean was coaching there this year. You know, because I remember a couple years back we went over to Lowell.
The flood
and
game.
That field was the muddiest football field I ever went and saw. And when we were walking out on that field before the game, you just sank like
Yeah.
And then I pointed out to Coach Fairfield, I said, hey,
Why are the sprinklers on?
Yeah, I said, come here, I want to tell you something. And right behind the stadium was the practice field,
Yeah.
dry as a bone.
Yeah.
Okay, I go, don't fall for that. It rained over here today because it doesn't cut off at the bleachers.
Right.
So that field's dry. This one is 6 inches of mud.
Sure.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
So I think that he wished Noel Dean was still there, so he'd like to, sting him again.
Cal, your thoughts?
Mikey, you stole all my thunder. Good for you. Because I wonder if Shane's never forgot it. And I wonder, the whole new staff, if he just doesn't, he's bitter about that one. If he just doesn't say, okay, boys, now it's my turn. You did this to us in 15, I think it was. So now it's my turn to get back.
Oh, Shane would be out there with a hairdryer.
Yeah.
Drying that turf right now.
Turnabout's fair play.
Dry this field right out.
Sure. We'll move on to Division 4. And we thought at one time maybe this was going to be Whitehall taking on Spring Lake, but things didn't shake out that way. Whitehall's going to be taking on Sparta over in Sparta.
Man, that's a fascinating matchup just from the standpoint of what are we going to get out of each squad? And
Right.
Sparta 7-2 as well, just like Whitehall. Sparta lost 22-21 to Oak Ridge in the opener, and that was when Ethan Joza had a safety for the winning points.
Right.
And then they lost to, I believe, former Ravenna coach and Shelby native Doug Samuels, Comstock Park time. I think they might have lost in overtime in that game. So that's their 2 losses. They went up to Ludington and handled them pretty good. Sparta, been a solid program, especially under Mark Chapman, the former Comstock Park coach, who, by the way, Tony Sigmund faced back in 2014 in a wild 41-36 game, I believe it was, over here at Whitehall. So just a lot of interesting storylines. Beautiful stadium over at Sparta, too, they're going to be playing at.
Mike?
I think this game is a perfect matchup. When you look at this side and you look at this side, and both teams have an outstanding Brody Fogus, they've got a Brody Fogus, a tall, gifted wide receiver. Both teams are playing dual threat quarterbacks that are both sophomores. Both teams have running backs like Pruitt, okay, and then the Turowski, the same exact height, weight. And you watch them on film, they look like twins. So I think it's a great matchup, and that's I'm really looking forward to seeing this matchup Friday night, and I hope that Whitehall plays their A game. I bring their A game over there and plays as well as they can. And like I said, though, this game is to me is going to be a toss-up.
Yeah.
And it's the team that makes the fewest MAs. So.
Yeah. And Cal, of course, Whitehall coming off that loss to Reed City. There's never, we talk about good losses. Nobody is ever going to be into the camp that there's a good loss. But maybe a wake-up call, Reed City getting them, certainly would think that they're going to be ready to play a Sparta team.
Well, definitely a wake-up call. Also probably cost them maybe a home field, game on Friday night. Quickly, I want to go back to Sparta with Mark Chapman, who was a former coach at Grant, who I was really fortunate to get to know a little bit. He lost his daughter, Kayla, this past spring, and she had some health issues, and she passed away. I think it's beautiful 17, I think she was a 17-year-old girl, just a wonderful young lady. And Mark Chapman, when you see that and you see the things on Facebook and how that whole Sparta community just wrapped that whole family under their wing, and now you see Mark back out there coaching again. Definitely you want to see Whitehall win, but that in your heartstrings you want to see Sparta win, make that magical run just for Mark Chapman and his family also.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. He just seems like a quality guy all the way around.
He's awesome.
You don't want to see that happen to anybody, but with guys that are that well respected, that's really tough to see.
Does he work in the community, Cal, over there, or is he in the building, or is it?
Last I knew, he was working, and he works in Sparta. I think some type of fabrication job. Now, he could have gotten a job at the school. I'm not,
I didn't know if he was a teacher.
No. He was in fabricating last I knew.
Well, we're in fabricating, aren't we? We
Right
do that.
now,
We do that every week.
fabricating
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Teams that need a fabricator.
Fruitport is at Cadillac, like we said. Scott going in and said, "Boy, there was that possibility that you're facing or Unity Christian 2 weeks in a row." The good news is not so, but you're playing a tough Cadillac team.
Yeah, consolation prize,
Pick your
maybe
poison.
not much of one, but yeah, I mean, the fact that they're in at
Yes.
4 and 5,
Right.
like we stated, playing that tough schedule helped that happen, created this opportunity for them. But you know, who knows that it's going to be, they're playing with house money, so we'll see what happens.
Exactly.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Again, you know, that's a pretty tough district too. It's a pretty tough district right here, so those will be good games. Be real good games.
Fruitport's been able to build this year. A playoff win would really help to continue that, what they've already built on, that foundation. Help to build up some more blocks there for the future.
Yeah, the White House Sparta winner wouldn't mind seeing that either, because that means they would get a home game if Fruitport pulls that off.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Spring Lake taking on Grand Rapids Christian. We kind of talked about, you know, you don't want to necessarily be going tail end forward into the playoffs, but with the injuries and all that type of stuff, going to be a challenge for Spring Lake, isn't it?
that's a tough draw. Grand Rapids
Yeah.
Christian 6 and 3, but they lost their first 2 games. Lost to South Christian and Unity Christian. That's a tough schedule. First 2 games, and then they lost to their third loss was to Forest Hills Central, the team we just got done talking about, and that was a 1 touchdown game. So I mean, they've played a really tough schedule. So they've, I mean, more so even probably than what obviously Spring Lake has seen.
Yeah.
You know, this will be, I think it'll be probably more of an uphill battle for Spring Lake, but you never know. We'll see what happens.
I think your term playing with house money, you can apply it here too. You know, you really look at some things and, okay, can we, you know, throw a wrinkle at them like Catholic did at Oak Ridge on the 2-point conversions. You know, you gotta look at some things and be a little more creative.
Can we get the clock to stop working?
Take some spare batteries with you this week.
Yeah.
Spring Lake being busted up is definitely not going to help them. Christian with the 3 losses to 3 great teams, like you just said. They haven't won anything yet. There's nothing in their trophy case. They can sit here and look at this, and we can win 2 games, or we can win a district. We can at least get some hardware in our trophy case. They got to be licking their chops, going, yeah, it's, you know, this is our 2nd season. Let's get going.
Licking their chops to get a shot at Unity Christian again.
Well,
the winner of that gets Unity Christian.
Yeah.
So you know, so that's what you're looking at. But you know, maybe if your grandpa's Christian, maybe you want that opportunity because you're like, they kind of took it to us the first time. Let's see how far we've grown in that time.
You'll remember this years ago, but and Jack Sugars won't like me, but Oak Ridge beat North Muskegon 66-6 in the regular season, and North Muskegon came back 21-14 in the playoffs and got them. So, anything can happen. That's why you play the game. It's at 48 minutes, and lightning can strike. Not literally, but anything can happen.
Yeah.
Division 5, Big Rapids is at Oak Ridge. Good news for the Oak Ridge Eagles is they're hosting a playoff game week number 1. I don't want to call it bad news, but the concerning news for Oak Ridge is just, again, we talked about it before, seem to be giving up a lot of points, and then they lose a heartbreaker to Muskegon Catholic Central. Again, you want to be heading into the playoffs with some momentum. You kind of wonder where Oak Ridge is at.
I kind of think Oak Ridge, the Eagles will be licking their chops, if you ask me, because they're going back into the CSAA Gold, where last year they won 3 straight games against CSAA Gold easily, won a district title, and then they're playing another CSAA Gold team this Friday with Big Rapids. They win that. They play another CSAA Gold team with the winner of Grant and Tri-County. I think they have to like their draw, at least in the first 2 rounds.
Yep, and I'm with you on that also. I mean, it's just normally the West Michigan Conference has done well, with the exception of last Friday night, against any of those CSAA teams.
The one thing that caught me that I noticed the last 2 weeks, because I've been at Oak Ridge the last 2 weeks, it to me that stood out that for some reason, I don't know if the kids are not in the best of condition at this point in time of the season, but I noticed that the defense did not play with a lot of emotion when they had a big play. You know, usually the kids rally, you know how they get fired up. I noticed that Oak Ridge would make a big play defensively, but you didn't see that emotion coming out of a defensive unit that's trying to intimidate, take over, and control, you know, that offense. And I hope they get to that point, you know, but I just didn't see it in those last 2 games where the defense played with a lot of intense, well, I won't say intensity, but with emotion. You know.
Do you really want to bet against Oak Ridge?
Usually not a good bet.
No.
It's usually not a
Not
good
this
bet.
time of
No,
year.
no. Yeah, especially this time of year.
Grant, you alluded to it, Scott. Grant is at Tri-County. Grant's got to be thrilled to be in the playoffs. I mean, they've had their struggles this year, but have hung on enough to earn a playoff berth, and they're playing a rival just down the street against Tri-County. Tri-County's had obviously a good year this year.
Yeah, I mentioned this again in the podcast that we recorded today. That'll be available, I believe, tomorrow. But I give Grant credit from the standpoint of new coach comes in, Mike Steffen, really in not an ideal situation, getting hired early summer, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he didn't have time to set up a 7-on-7 schedule. Was not able to set up a scrimmage, or at least didn't feel like they were in a position where they were ready to do that. So you're kind of jumping in with both arms tied behind your back, and you go in, and to their credit, they've played pretty tough throughout the season. They've been blown out maybe once or twice, but they've been hanging around in a lot of these games, and it's good to see them get rewarded for playing good football, really considering what they've been through.
Sure.
Good friend of mine, Doug Pasco's helped be, he's a medic with the Grant Fire Department, so he's been on their sidelines some throughout the whole season, and he said, wow, after week 1, because you don't have the 7-on-7s, you don't have the scrimmage, he goes, it's going to be a long season. And about week 3, he says, hey, they're starting to get better, and he has seen progress all week long. So when you hire, and you were 100% correct, when you hire your head coach late, you have no 7-on-7s, you have no scrimmage, your first scrimmage is your first game. Basically, you are behind the 8 ball. So for the Grant Tigers to get in at 4-5 this year, wow, what a win for them.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I did not know that. I knew they had a new coach, but I think it gives them a lot to build on in the offseason.
Yeah. Phil Butler gets to host a postseason game, so he'll be thrilled with that too. Phil's done a great job building up that Tri-County team again, so kudos to him. Move on to Division 6. Mike on WLCS is going to be doing Whitehall and Sparta this week. We're going to be doing Central Montcalm here in Montague with CatchMark. We'll providing the audio for their video again, and go to Cal on this one first. We saw Central Montcalm last week against Montague. Should be a good first week for Montague to be able to get their feet back on the ground.
Well, you certainly would think so. Hopefully they're healthy. They need Tug, and they have all their other players. They need everybody healthy to make a playoff run. New head coach is going to be his first forte into the playoffs as being the head coach. So, but he has a balanced nucleus of players who spent a lot of time in the last 2 years in the playoffs. So to also help get them through that first week. But yeah, Central Montcalm. Wow, their special teams. You had to bring it up. It was like watching a nightmare or living a nightmare. Hopefully they can find somebody this week, somebody somewhere in that school that can hike a football.
Male or female.
Yeah, I don't care who. Just get it back to him. It's not the punter's fault.
Yeah, no. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he doesn't even get the ball, does
No.
he? Yeah. Anything to add to?
Yeah, just Montague. This is why you play a tough schedule.
Yeah.
You build up those playoff points so you can host a game, have the opportunity to. And,
Sure.
again, I obviously really like their chances this week. And then next week, again, I see that matchup with Reed City coming, and that's where you really find out exactly, where this team is at. Because, playing the schedule they played, I thought they managed it pretty well considering.
Right.
But I think Reed City, someone, obviously they're punching at your own weight now. Reed City's dropped down. They used to be Division 4 maybe, then Division 5,
Right.
and now Division 6. But I think that would be a great matchup next week. So I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit next week to that.
Yeah. Yeah, the other end of that bracket's Manistee at Reed City. If Manistee should knock off Reed City and Montague knock off Central Montcalm, Montague could host another game. So there is that, right?
And that's happened, where it's happened with Montague, where they thought, oh, man, we're going to be on the road. No, there's an upset. Now you're home again.
Sure.
Yeah, well, don't forget, Montague got ousted by Bill Crane's Kansas City Eagles here, too, about 4 years ago, and nobody thought that was going to happen.
Right.
So Manistee is capable of jumping up and getting Reed City. Because you just look, you see upsets all the time in the playoffs.
Division 7, Delton Kellogg at Muskegon Catholic.
Yeah, obviously Catholic, that's a great matchup for them. They actually got a pretty good draw. Although we can look at next week, that could be interesting depending on who comes out of the North Muskegon-Ravenna game. But Catholic, I think they got a very experienced group. They're good up front. I just obviously like this one. And I'm not convinced Delton has seen the kind of opposition that Muskegon Catholic has. I don't know if they're necessarily ready for this kind of game.
Your thoughts, Mike?
Well, again, I was really impressed with how the Muskegon Catholic, there was kids, there were no quit. No matter, like I said, their backs are right up against the wall, and if they don't block that field goal attempt, man, it's c'est la vie,
Right.
And for them just to sit there and I mean, just stay focused and get that done. The other thing I like is, I like Coach Zerwan, I love going down there and talking to not only Mike Rybecki, but his son Jason's coaching there now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wonder who the next head coach will be. If he sticks. It's a great story, though. You know what I mean? Just a great story. But I really like the attitude of those kids. And like I said, the Waller kid, he's a legit running back. He is a machine.
Can you imagine if they would have made that field goal? It would have been 98-4 at that time. That would have been insurmountable.
Yeah.
Well, I saw helicopters circling the stadium at that time. And
Catholic Central, it is Catholic Central time, right? Playoffs,
It
their history.
It certainly is Catholic Central time, and you got to believe when Catholic Central's defensive line walks up against their offensive line this Friday night, they're not going to be. They're going to be looking at players more their own size. Where Oak Ridge is so big,
Right.
so big. I don't think D8 teams have an offensive line that big, so you're going to be able to match. And then they matched up very well. Obviously, they won, but going to really be able to match up size-wise also on Friday night.
Move on to North Muskegon at Ravenna. That's going to be your CatchMark game. You're going to be over there with CatchMark. Talk about this one.
Yeah. Didn't see the first one you guys did.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys can speak to how that game went. I know there were, at that time, I think Young got hurt in that game, right?
He did.
He broke his collarbone.
Yeah, they brought in
I think
Belmonte.
Belmonte was still playing because
Yes.
he didn't get hurt until the Mason County game the next
Right.
week, maybe.
Right.
So I don't know if you could tell me how that game went. But Ravenna was also without a couple players that game. Mabrito didn't play, neither did McCullough. And I think they're both going to be back this week. Mabrito broke his hand, but he's going to be, I think you're going to be wrapping his hand up, and he'll at least play defense. He plays linebacker, I think.
Yeah.
And then they'll have McCullough. McCullough played last week, obviously had that big
Sure.
game. He's a guy that I think, in my honest opinion, I think they need to use him more. Use him.
Yeah.
Maybe he's underutilized a little bit, maybe. I'm not in those coaching meetings, and they got their schemes for a reason, but
Right.
he just impresses me as a kid who could really make some plays and help them.
Yeah. My take on the North Muskegon, I'll let Cal weigh in here too. In the North Muskegon Ravenna game was obviously they lost Young with the shoulder injury. Bring in Belmonte, and boy, you talk about your personality changes because Belmonte is not necessarily the thrower that Young is. So all of a sudden it turns into more of a mobile quarterback situation. So you got to make those changes on the fly. And then, like I said, I'm awestruck that all of a sudden Belmonte gets injured and they put in a third string quarterback and he winds up beating Ludington. So I guess anything can happen, Cal.
Certainly can. But Belmonte during that game, you got to believe he probably took very few reps at quarterback.
Right.
And just did an admirable job.
He did.
Throughout that whole game running, trying to, he threw some passes also. So, yeah, where's this game at Ravenna?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Ravenna's going to be a tough out. I think they're going to surprise people. Just watch them. They have some weapons. And I just think they're flying under the radar.
They've got some athletes. I've said it
They
all
do,
year.
yeah.
If they get any kind of play up front, they can be a real problem for people, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
one thing I see about this game is you've got two evenly matched teams going at it. And they're going to have to play 4 quarters, and it's going to be a very physical football game. Then they got to turn around in the winter next week.
More than likely play Catholic.
You know where I'm going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
But Justin Ego's been in these games. Maybe not as head coach. And Larry's been in some too, but Justin Ego's been in a boatload of big games.
Well, Ego, if this happens, should Ravenna beat North Muskegon, you're looking at a Ego-Zerwan matchup, and they were teammates at Catholic, and they're good friends, and so that'll be something.
The stories
Might
behind
be.
the stories. Let's move on to Division 8. White Cloud, how about that? We talked about not having football programs, I think 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years. They fielded a football team do quite well enough to get in the playoffs. But they're playing Heights. They were originally our kind of feel-good story at the beginning of the year, fell on some hard times during the season, but as you said, Scott, they're hosting a playoff game against White Cloud. And I'm looking at this draw here, and Heights can make some noise, I think. In
Yeah,
this.
it's actually, I think it's White Cloud at Carson City, Crystal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's Holton at.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. Sorry about that.
But White Cloud, to your original point,
Right.
they've been down
Ladies
for
and
quite a while.
gentlemen, this proves that mental illness strikes every 60
That's
seconds.
right. Yeah.
He must have designed the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Rich.
Yeah. Now I'm doubting everything.
No, so White Cloud, they got in the playoffs last year, but everybody got in the playoffs.
Right.
So,
Right.
credit to them for getting back in. Going to be a tough one. It's an uphill battle facing Carson City Crystal.
Yes.
And then in the other side of that, I think Holton and Heights is the one, and I think that one's a really
There you
interesting
go.
matchup.
Yeah, I really do too. Your thoughts, Mike?
Does White Cloud, help me out here, and I don't know a lot about them, but they've got a
They're just
a
north of
running-
Newaygo.
White Cloud has a running back that's a pretty decent athlete, from what I've heard. Am I on the right line there? Who the
I don't know
stud
if
on that team?
If it's
over there?
Mason Ruther, maybe is he your
I
quarterback?
heard they've got a running back or somebody that was a pretty powerful young man carrying the football, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know if we had any stats on the young man or if there was somebody at White Cloud's program that is like men flying under the radar.
Well, I know Mason Ruther, he might even be their quarterback. I'm not sure, but he was an all-state baseball player for them because White Cloud had a school record baseball team last year where they set a school record for number of wins. He was their shortstop, and I think he was a sophomore starting shortstop. First team all-stater. I'm not sure if that's the same guy, but he's one of their keys in their football team too.
Wow.
And we don't want to shortchange Holton here a little bit. I mean, they'll be playing in the playoffs. They got Coach Alex Smith his first year. Congratulations to him and the Red Devils getting in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that he did a great job. They had a rough start against Hart.
Yeah.
Alex Smith against his buddy Joe Tanis, the co-defensive coordinators for the West Michigan Ironmen. But yeah, he got him regrouped and got him to this position and in the playoffs, and at a time when their program is also struggling with numbers a little bit.
Right.
They're playing some 8-player games on JV and whatever, but at least they got a JV team.
Sure.
At least they're making it work. So kudos to them. But I honestly think it's a really good matchup between them and Heights.
Toughest game for week 1 for our local opponent. Who you got?
Toughest game.
Toughest game.
I'm looking at that Mona Shores Forest Hill Central game. I mean, I think there's some people that are thinking, okay, maybe we'll pick up Shores in that next game against Caledonia if Caledonia gets by. I don't think you can look past Forest Hill Central.
The ones that jump out to me as far as pure toss-ups, it's Mona Shores and Forest Hill Central and Whitehall and Sparta. Those are the two that really jump out in my mind as ones that could clearly go either way. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. What do you think, Cal?
Yeah, those two. I'm going to jump back to Holton real quick. You got to be able to tackle. If you can catch them, you got to be able to tackle them. Sometimes if you can't catch them, you can't tackle them. And I'm worried about the height speed because they're going to be fast against Holton. Has Holton seen that type of speed throughout this year? Going back to your question there and what you said, man, the Shores game was a matchup. Whitehall, Sparta, wow, that flipped the coin. Man, there's just some good ones out there.
Ravenna.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
Ravenna game.
had a podcast again. I'll refer to it for a third time on the show. But can you talk promoting it a little
I was
bit?
going to say,
You
you
think
get
there's a
paid?
little promotion? I might get paid for that promotion.
Yeah,
Come on, Brent.
exactly.
Come on, let's kind of sweeten the pot here. I think in the podcast, the two other guys I did with Brent Rath and Zach Zweigel, they were all in on Ravenna, I think. I think I'll pick Ravenna too, but I'm not giving them the huge edge that everyone else is. I see this as a tough game just because I think North Muskegon's too well coached and has too much pride to just show up and get rolled over.
Well, and I would like to also add to that, condolences from all of us to Brent White, okay? Because Brent kind of retired from football last year, leaving the Muskegon staff. Now he's coaching at 2 schools and has games on Friday and Saturday night this weekend. So it sucks to be you, Brent.
Yeah. Well,
I think Ravenna's my sleeper team.
yeah.
Something about them.
Yeah.
They have some talent.
They do. The BB kids are really solid if you threw him. I mean, he does a good job on that team, but put him on a team like Whitehall, or not to take away the kids that are already on
Sure.
those teams, but surround them in a different situation, maybe with a little bit you know, just in a different situation with maybe more talent here, more talent there. Ravenna's got talent in places, but if you put him surrounded with more, I just think he's one of the most overall talented, skilled athletes in the league.
Sure.
He's in an offense now where he has a split half a second to make a decision where the play's gonna go, okay? And we're not talking about one decision, we're talking about an RPO, okay? So he has an offense now that he's trying to master, okay, and get his reads in quicker, okay, and get the ball back to the line of scrimmage. So, you know, this is, you know, what a learning period he's had here, and hopefully in the playoffs now, you know, getting better and better each week with that, and learning the offense and the scheme. You know, you're going to see the, you know, results of that.
We went long here, but I did promise Rick I would get a trivia question in here, guys, and it has to do with playoffs, okay? And you probably see
Isn't
the
time
answer.
up now, Jesse? Don't we have to quit the show right now?
Jesse, we're yeah.
Cut.
What Muskegon, now this is Muskegon County. We've had trivia questions at our area teams, you know, Oceana and Owego. No, this is strictly Muskegon County. What Muskegon County team has played the most playoff games? He had the top 3. So can you come up with the top 3, or can you come up with the top 1?
Do I have to list them in order?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, come on.
Anybody, you want to take a shot at it?
Most playoff games
Most playoff games. yeah.
total? Okay.
Yeah.
So the playoff era.
You don't have to
75
tell
on.
me how many games.
No, no, but
Yeah.
Muskegon Catholic's obviously in there. Is Ravenna in there?
Don't know. Is that your guess?
That's one of my guesses, because they're
Okay.
38 and 18, I believe, all time. I read that stat.
I'll let everybody go through it, and I'll let you
and
know.
and then I guess you got to go with. Do you have to go with Muskegon? I don't know.
Okay,
but
so you
go
got
ahead.
Muskegon, Ravenna.
Because there's Oak Ridge has been in 17 straight years, so you would think they'd probably be
Sure.
one of them. But
Okay.
I'll give you 4 of them. That's cheating though. But I guess I'll have to stick with my first 3. Catholic's definitely in there, I would think.
Okay.
And then the question, I guess maybe even Oak Ridge, and then the question is it Muskegon or Ravenna?
Okay. Let's see. Okay. How about you, Cal? What do you think?
Muskegon Catholic, Oak Ridge, and Muskegon Big Reds.
I'll say,
Back up. Muskegon Catholic, Oak Ridge, and the Big Reds. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'll say Muskegon Catholic, Ravenna, and North Muskegon.
Muskegon Catholic, Ravenna. Okay. According to Rick Hickman, Muskegon Catholic, everybody was unanimous in that. Muskegon, well, they had 105 games. Then you go to the Big Reds, 90 games, and then you go Oak Ridge, 75 games.
Yep.
So.
Because you've been in 17 straight years if you're Oak Ridge, and
How
then
you expect me to know that? I've only lived up here 20 years.
and then
Mike don't even know where his car keys are. What
not
are we
only
trying
Oak Ridge 17
Room
straight
service.
years, but they're 25 of 26 or something like that. They've been
Yeah.
in so,
Yeah.
and then they've had some pretty good
But-
success along the time.
But good job, guys, for
Yeah.
cold being thrown at you cold.
Look at it this way. Jack was there 32 years. He qualified 20 times,
Yeah.
or 21 times. He qualified for the playoffs, even back before 6. I mean, so that tells you how difficult that is. Kerry's been there 11, and he's been in every year. So that's 31.
Right.
31 years that they've been, I think, ballpark that they've been in the playoffs.
So before Jack Sugars at Oak Ridge, would you call that BS?
Yes.
Before Sugars? Is it-
Before
okay,
Sugars, yes.
just
Yeah.
You know,
that's why I get paid the big bucks.
That's right.
your next chair is not going to be behind that desk.
All right. Hey, I'll tell you what, Jesse's been more than patient with us. Jesse King, our fine producer, we want to thank him. Thank you, guys. It's been fun.
Yep.
And we'll see what
Thank you.
next week brings, huh?
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care. That's going to do it for me. I'm John Russell for Cal Van Single, Scott DeCamp, and Mike Taylor over there. Have yourself a good night, everybody.